Morgan talking performance golf. So that should be interesting. I'll spend all weekend thinking some really horrible questions up that'll send you into a spin. 21. Aha, here's Mark. Perfect. Dr. Kwan's joined. We'll be there at 9 o'clock, sir. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, I was just finishing up a lesson. We're actually teaching here, so I had a junior in, and ran over a little bit.
That doesn't matter. I can talk to myself.
Well, that's good. That's the definition of insanity or genius, one of the two.
I would think it's probably the first one.
Well, that's good.
Hey, when you've been sat inside for the last 4 or 5 weeks, you could end up talking to yourself, couldn't you? I mean, it's...
Yeah, you guys have got it very... It's over there, it's tough. My mum lives in Surrey, so obviously... One of my first comments was going to be, what sort of accent is that? Unique.
Somebody did tell me the other day, because whenever I've sort of looked at who I've been talking to, I've then gone ferreting around trying to find out information. The first thing that came to mind was that you were from Surrey.
Yeah, it's funny. No, I would say it sounds. I go to England and they're like, "Are you from Australia? Where are you from?" Australia. My mum starts cringing, and I'm like, "He's not a convict." So,
so how do you end up going from Surrey to wherever you are now, California?
So I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, but I got here via a college scholarship back in the early 90s. I came to America, got a scholarship, and never left. So I've been really blessed, fortunate. My wife's American. My kids are all born here. So America's been really, really good to this kid from Bookham, Effingham, Surrey.
And you've just got, did I hear the other day while I was listening to you, you've just got your American citizenship?
Yep, I have. I've got 2 passports now. I've got a blue one and a maroon one.
Oh, depends where you're going, to which one you take. Hey?
Yes.
Hey?
Depends if who's being nicer to the rest of the world, Boris or Donald.
Yeah. Hey, tell you what though, we had I didn't know if you know, we had Gary Player on the other night. I've told everybody this, and he was on it for Donald Trump and everything. He was going to put the world to right on Wednesday night. Brilliant.
Oh, really?
Absolutely brilliant. But
funny.
I thought, you know what, I've seen you must have been on everybody's talk. I thought, I've got to speak to Mark Blackburn. I'm going to speak to everybody.
It's overrated.
And I thought he's going to be amazing. First of all, he's from Surrey, so he's at least got something in common. We're both from England.
Yeah.
And then I thought, and then I see you do all sorts of stuff: ground forces, players on tour, everything.
Not everything, but a few different. Yeah. If it has to do with golf, I do a lot of things. Outside of golf, I'm a part-time dad, I guess, and that was probably it. I'm pretty boring other than that. So.
Yeah, but in golf it gets exciting, doesn't it? Hey,
it's a labour of love.
Hey? And you know, just lately, I always see you with the pressure plates on, talking ground forces, talking, all that side of it. Is that something that's you enjoy the most, or
I guess
found more beneficial?
So I think that any of the technology I've always found fascinating to understand how things work. And so it's obviously coaching tour players affords you some really good opportunities, and namely that if they're successful, they're playing for a lot of money, right? So that then means you get compensated, which means you can invest some of that into technology. So I'm really lucky because I've had that situation where, I'm sitting in my bay now. You got three 3D systems. You got.
Are they your last few lessons?
Yeah, you've got.
They're looking very healthy.
So you've got all this technology, which allows you to look at things and understand. And when you're helping the best players, you want to be able to give them good information. And then the cool thing is to take that information and be able to help your regular members. Our Greystone Club here, we got 1,200 members. I teach lots of juniors. Like, I teach a whole gamut of players. So it's just, and we have 6 instructors. So it's taking a lot of that technology and learning and just helping people. So it's fun, right? I mean, if you enjoy it,
I think anything where you can give factual information or facts is definitely better than an opinion, isn't it? You know what I mean?
100%, yeah. And I'd say as English people, we're pretty pragmatic pragmatic, not overly flashy. So I'm kind of like, I'm going to tell you how it is objectively. Now, sure, we do lots of coaching, but I'm very sort of objective, fact-based. Look, here's what's happening. Okay, now the creative side, the artistic part is how do we package that up? What do we give you as a prescription? How do we develop a program with motor learning in it, with like the technical competencies you need? And then how do we transfer that to the golf course? So the other parts come afterwards, but I always think, why guess what you can measure, right? And then at least that way you're doing your due diligence and you're not being negligent. And that's kind of the way I've always looked at it.
Yeah, I think so. So what do you think you've learned from using them with let's say your better players? Everybody, you know what I mean? What is there? Do you see commonality in the pressure traces and things you're seeing or not?
No, so I would say that there's an array of different things. I would say people are really good, generate energy efficiently, and they do it a way that works for them based on their movement pattern. And then a lot of times what you see stylistically isn't as far off from a sort of technical aspect when you start to look at the kinetic of it, what's going on. Like, we see the kinematics of something, the visual, but the kinetic, what causes that, the forces and torques, they're not that far off. They're not that different. It's just, you know, different people apply things in a certain different way, but it does come down to pretty simple physics at the end of the day, right? So I'm really lucky that I've developed relationships with lots of really smart people, way smarter than this guy. And that really helps, because does it hold up to scientific principles? Does it work? Like, I mean, it's, when you start to get into like anatomy, physiology, physics, those things, they're all actually quite easy to apply. It's just you have to understand them well enough to do that. And unfortunately, I probably didn't study those things from the physics type stuff as well as I should have done at school. I was an exercise science major here, so I have an understanding of the body. So it's kind of just point, because now I've always been agnostic. All my players swing differently, but now I really am, because I'm like, well, we can make that work. You do this pretty good. We probably need to add this. And I always tell everybody it's a lot more about harmonizing what someone does and balancing it out, as opposed to necessarily maximizing it, especially at the elite level, right? So it's interesting. There's a lot of commonalities in the fact that they put the club on the ball and they've got really good face-to-path relationship, whether it's out to in or in to out. That's what I would say they're really good at, right? Yeah. Now, how they transfer energy, they're good at transferring energy from internally to distally. They're great at it. And if the ones that are really good, they smash it. And obviously, in today's game, that's going to help you dominate if you can do some of the other pieces. So,
well, with today's game is really quite interesting, in because to all extent, it is quite a power game these days. So the creation and the use of energy is massive to be able to propel the ball the right distance. But 100%. There's almost, in my eyes, there's almost like, let's say, a couple of sets of players. There's the absolute bomber who's just hitting it a mile, who's got good accuracy, and then you've got the one who hits it, arrow straight, pinpoint accuracy, who's got good distance, but not the distance that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
They're quite different, but at the same time, they can both score playing their own game.
Yeah,
and what I find quite interesting, and what I thought I'd talk to you about as well, is that if you look at your spectrum of players, when I see them, they all swing it a little differently, right? So they've probably all got their individual strengths and weaknesses,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're all successful.
Yeah.
You know, and I find it quite fascinating that, you know, a coach can have a group of players, however many there is, 3, 4, right? They could all swing it completely differently. They can all have completely different games.
Yeah.
So the different skill sets within their game can all have different levels of effectiveness in play. And that's what enables them to, you know, score. And it must be quite challenging to almost to be able to just look at them as an individual and not think, and try and apply bits that somebody else does really well.
Yeah, so it's quite funny you say that. So if you look at a player, and you can see it now with the statistics, and you pull up their stats, you kind of see they categorize it as strokes gained driving, strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, and strokes gained putting, right? Like that's the general. So you kind of see, and they rank them in a chart, and every player kind of has those things differently. And then based on that, you're obviously always trying to improve what somebody does, but not while diminishing their strengths. So every player has a strength, to your point, and the job as a coach is to maintain the strengths, but then just chip away gently at those other pieces, and then the compounding of improving that over time helps them play better. But I enjoy the critical thinking portion of coaching. So when people say teaching is the technical pieces of, okay, you need to do this and this. Coaching is taking all of those ingredients that go into performance and being able to improve the pieces necessary. Now, the good thing we have now is that there are a lot of teams. A player like almost has a village with them. Do you know what I mean? It's no longer just like it's not like Ledbetter and Faldo days anymore. Yeah. I mean, we've got everybody. We've got like glorified tea people, tea boys. We've got
you always need one of that.
We've got I mean, I'm being facetious, but some players have massive teams. I mean, I'm involved with teams. We all have to have trainers, sports psychologists. Most of them have a statistician, and that's just so. The great thing about that is I don't have to be the expert by any means. You're just like I'm a Liverpool fan, so you're a bit like Jurgen Klopp.
Oh,
right?
no.
He does. Yeah.
Oh no! I ruined it now. Actually, from Surrey and support Liverpool.
so, or you could be like Alex Ferguson or anyone. Like you have all these different coaches within the team that specialize in certain things. So the transfer of information when someone is an expert, like you're always going to have your strong suits. But if you really want to help somebody be great, you bring in an expert from that field as a consultant as part of the team. So that first off makes me a better coach because I get to learn, but then it also makes that player better and allows them to improve their performance, which is when you coach tour players, I think most people that do it, your compensation is driven from their earnings. So it's you're investing in them. You're very similar. It's a partnership in a way because you don't make any money if they don't make any money. So you're kind of in it together. So it makes sense to kind of get the best information to get the best results, but in a non-invasive technical way. That's the hard part, is how do you convey the messaging and the information, which may be completely factually right, and then there needs to be a sort of if you like, a point where, all right, we need to do something here. How do you deliver that? What do you do? I mean, how does that get done? What's the way to do it? And so I've really enjoyed the fact that every player's like a different person. They bring a different set of ingredients, and my job is to make a really good recipe out of what they've got and then add bits and bobs that they might need. And that's kind of how I've done it. And so I like that. I mean, I don't really think you can do more than sort of 7 or 8 guys. I've got about that many now, and they're all different. I've spent a lot of time with them. Yesterday I was on with 3 guys. We do FaceTime. I watch and practice. We do stuff in the gym. I'll watch workouts with their trainers, and there's a lot of like feedback, interaction, just trying to help them get better at what they're doing. And that's
It's amazing.
now.
It's amazing, Mark, isn't it? How much the modern day coach knows about the players
Yeah,
from not just the swing perspective, but
yeah,
absolutely everything about their physiology, mental side, the lot. You know, in
yes,
order to be able to make, calculated decisions
yeah,
on
yeah,
their
yeah.
career. Because, at the end of the day, if you're coaching someone on the PGA Tour, who has to make X amount of money every year to retain their card, it'd be really easy to make a bad decision
Oh,
and
yeah.
throw their
And I'll
career
be
the
the
other way.
first. I've made them, right? We've all made them as coaches, but over time, you hope not to make as many, and that's where you get the wisdom and you learn from the mistakes. But that's where the team atmosphere does help because you minimize those. But you're right. You're playing with, it's a Fortune 500 company, and you're highly responsible for the output, and that's tough.
But I mean, at the same thing now is that at least you have the technology to make calculated decisions
Yeah,
based on what they're actually doing, not what
100%.
they
Yeah,
look like they're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, if you're players and you have the data in front of you from all the different ingredients put together, then you're in a position where you can almost surgically make the right incision, bang, and it's done.
yeah, yeah,
Long
totally.
long gone are the days where you go wading in like a butcher and right, I've
Yeah,
changed
no,
that, I've changed that. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah, no, you're
it's
right.
like it's like keyhole surgery now, isn't it? Little
Yeah,
incision done.
yeah.
And I think it's such a skill to be able to go. That's the piece.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's the tough part with technology. Gets a bash, right, from a lot of, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but over here in the US, like lots of the pundits like bash technology and teaching. And the truth of the matter is technology is awesome. It's just how well can you interpret the technology and then relay the information in a really simple manner. And you actually have to know it well to be able to do that. And the tough part is there's the sort of access to information is readily available, especially through the internet. So everybody thinks you're an expert, and that's the
Yeah,
trouble, right? And it's I always tell everyone the best coaches have got the best bedside manners in every sport, or they have the
yeah,
ability
yeah,
to interact with people. And it's the human soft skills, which are, if you're coaching a tour player, they're just as important as, you could be the smartest person on the technical skills, but if you've got no human skills, you're not going to be very good. Because if you're at a tournament and they're throwing the toys out the pram, going bonkers, you've got to be able to react, give them some information to calm the situation and help them play. There's
and they
none.
will go bonkers.
Yes,
They
but
will go bonkers.
everybody that's a high performer in any field has a little bit of that in them, because that's just what you need to do to be really good, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it goes with the territory. So, that's part of it. But you have to embrace that. I enjoy that. That to me is kind of part of the job that's fun. Like, you're testing your skills, right? It's okay. Well, how are we going to remedy this? I'm going to try and be the calm in the storm and get a resolution here. So
And
you
that,
either like that or you don't like it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And if your brain likes to solve problems, that's kind of fun. That's what you got to love what you do.
And experience helps, doesn't it? Be able to make the right decision at the right time,
Yeah.
or give the right bit of information at the right time.
Oh yeah.
I
Coach, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
remember being at a tour event probably 18 months ago with a player, and he was about to go Barmer on Wednesday afternoon. He was toys were out.
Happens on Wednesdays. They get Mondays not so bad. Tuesdays, yeah, maybe. Wednesdays can be like
Well,
DEFCON 3.
this would have been all right, but he'd sacked the cabbie on Sunday
Oh
because he
no.
turned up drunk to the fourth round, right? So he'd
Oh,
gone on Sunday. So I'm literally carrying the bag round practice day as well. And we've got there Wednesday, played 9 holes in the morning, playing good, it's in nice, miles better. And he's going Barmer. And you've got like the best players in the world stood next to him, and he's going to Barmer. And when you stand there and you go, I don't want to be here. This is and he's like looking at you like, what is going on? And at the time, you either think, right, I'll just walk away, or I'm just going to tell you straight, this is the facts of life. So I thought, that moulding me ground here, you're wrong, right? So I've gone, look, mate, I'm not being funny. You're wrong. This is simple. You've done it all week. You did it last week. Get on with it. And it's hard, isn't it? Because they're in a physical state now. It's not like they just go, okay, a minute, take a chip. That's better now. Relax. They're not. They're worked up. They're ready to go.
Yeah. I think the environment of a tournament is a terrible place. Like, you have to do like trauma, right? Like, if the A&E is some tournaments you have to do A&E. Like, you've got like, I'm going to casualty, we got a problem. But most of the time, tournaments are the worst place to work at anything, because people are highly, like, already animated, let's just say, and so they're not necessarily listening and they're panicking. So the work's got to be done. At a tournament, it's more refining, a lot more, well, here's what's going on and what's coaching, and it's not a great spot for intervention whatsoever. But sometimes you do have to tell them, like you said. I mean, and I think, to your point, that does come, though, with experience. Like, if a player knows you've coached players for 15, 20 years on tour and you've got success, they know that there's a degree of expertise and confidence with that. They're not necessarily going to argue. There's just a trust bond. And that's why coaches like Cowan...
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the end of the story is. That the next thing that arrives is the trackman man's on the range with his little orange box. Yeah. So he goes, get over here, put that down. Here, I want to see what this says, driver. So he's hitting it straight. There's nothing wrong with it. So get me them numbers up. So he gets the numbers up. Best he's ever seen. You've never swung it like this. I'm looking at. Can you just say that again? I didn't quite get it. A bit louder, preferably, so everyone down here can hear it. So, oh yeah, this and the other. I said, get his other numbers up. So he gets them up. I said, different class, different miles back. So I was like, okay, enough. I'll go and get the tea now. See you later, thank you. So anyway, he's got to go to the doctors because he's got a bad wrist. So he's got to go to the doctors. So we get in the buggy to go back to the clubhouse. I said, do you know what? He says, what do you think? I said, well, I'll tell you what I think, and I'll be really straight with you. I said, I feel like I've just tuned a Ferrari. I said, it only needed a nudge, right? And I've tuned a Ferrari now. It's going to go around the track as fast as you can get it. And he went, oh, I know what you mean. And I went, the problem is, my driver's rubbish. Look, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they got to take ownership that there's nothing wrong with it. Get on with it. You know. Yeah. So come on, Mark. Let's see your best one.
That's what makes tour players good, though. You have to remember, like, transfer of blame is what a lot of athletes do, but that's what makes them great, because that's what basically ensures their self-preservation, that makes them who they are. Like, if you're a previous former player, you got to understand that. And if you're going to work in the arena, you've got to understand some of the stuff that they say. If you had a tape recorder on there, it's not rational. But that's what makes them tick, and that's why they're so good. So you just go with it. And what's incredible is how, with a switch to your story, with a light switch, they can go from suicidal to bulletproof. And that's what makes them amazing. That's what makes them amazing. Murder.
I was going to go from, murder victim on the range to, wow. So come on then, Mark. Let's see your best one.
Oh no!
Best story, Plague and Mad. You don't have to say who it is.
No. Well, I was in a. Okay, so this is not a bad. This is a funny one. So I'm trying to think what year this is. I'm in Dubai with a European tour player, a friend of mine, tall Swedish guy.
Blonde
won the Order of Merit. I coached him for 12 years. Robert Carlson. He's a lovely friend of mine. Okay. So we started working together in 07, and then in 08, obviously, he played incredible. So we're in Dubai, and I can't remember what year this is. This might be, I've got a bib there somewhere with it might be like 10, 11, 12. I can't remember we're in Abu Dhabi, and the next week's Qatar. And we're in Abu Dhabi, and we've been doing some practice, and Rob's not hitting it very good. That's probably, and remember, if the player's not hitting it very good, that's the coach's fault.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's right.
which is fine. It's not a bad thing. And so I can remember, like, we're working on this, and Rob's getting really frustrated. And I'm like, look, this is it. I'm telling you, this is the right, just trust me, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, he makes the cut, but he doesn't play very good. In the end of the world, I'm like, just work on the same thing. This is it. Just trust me. Get a phone call the next week in Qatar. Oh, this stuff's working. It's pretty good. Well, then he wins in Qatar. So I'm like, the next week. So it goes from, this isn't the right thing, it's terrible, to the next week he's winning, right? So, I mean, it's there, and there's lots of stories like that, but they're great because you can use those to tell other players. And that's when you've been in the situation before, that's a reassurance, right? So as a coach, hey, it's going to be all right. Golf, like 24 hours is a long time in golf. And when players are really, really good, they can take a feeling and they can stretch it and they can make it work really, really well. And so they're so good that you're trying to create a confidence. And some coaches are so good at it, like they're master manipulators. And those are the pieces that as you spend more time around people, you get the ability to do that. And those players are just fun to watch because what they're able to do is pretty incredible. Like they can go from it being terrible to they get hot. It's unreal what can happen really quickly. So it's just unique. But that is like the 1%. That's not the normal golfers that we coach too. But those stories are always good because they're mechanisms to engage somebody when you've got a junior golfer or a college golfer or a club golfer. Sometimes storytelling and conveying something with a story is much easier because it takes someone out of the context. You know, this person did this person, when you very well know you're talking about the person in front of you, but you're using somebody else as an association. So it makes it much easier. They don't feel like it's a personal attack on them. Well, you can't believe what this guy did. It was unbelievable. And it's a person standing in front of you, but people, that's just a way you got to present things. It's all about, it's kind of, it's not what you say, but the way that you say it as much as anything, right? And that's coaching. Yeah. That is coaching. And that is very different. And it's what some people don't seem to get. That's very different from being in this awesome, sterile teaching facility, working on X's and O's and worrying about where the club center of mass is and how much horizontal plane torque you're applying and all these other things. This is not the same animal. They're just totally different.
And the thing is, like, they are totally different, completely different, but they're completely different mentalities as well.
Yes.
On both ends of the spectrum, aren't they? Because if you've got a high-level athlete who's playing for their money, their livelihood, they're going to have a completely different mentality to somebody who's going, Mark, show me something really technical. It doesn't matter whether it makes me that. Just show me something that I can talk about to my mates.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people tour players really want the application of information more than anything. They don't care. The simpler you can make it, the less big words you use, the more it can be like, do this. A lot of them want to know the why. So you better know that you know the why of why you're saying it. But the simpler it is, the better. Like, that's great. Now, when you get engineers, doctors, lawyers, like big swinging it's coming in here, they want to, well, then you just like, this is, okay, well, why? Can you tell me more of that? I need to see more of this. Oh, can I see a tour player do this? That's a different animal, right? To your point, then it just becomes the ego gets involved. But tour players don't care about that. Good players, they just want to they want to be able to do it really simply. So it's different. And that's, again, that's your packaging, right? Your packaging's got to be different for everybody. I tell everyone, we're in sales, whether you like it or not. Your information has to be sold to the person that's come to you. And you can have bad information and great sales, and you might be a great teacher coach. You can have, the best information and be terrible at selling and not be a very good teacher or coach at all. And that's the hard part. And I always tell folks, there's no substitute for teaching golf lessons and having interaction with people. Most golf pros back in the day that are any good, like when we grew up, they were a character. They could play golf, but they had the ability to talk to people, right? They were the people that were successful. Kind of makes sense. Whereas now there's all this technology. People will go listen to a complete muppet with no personality, but that
the other thing is that the technology is great used in the right way.
Yes,
to help somebody, isn't it? You know what I mean?
100%.
And there is sometimes that, you know, I've seen it many a time over the years where technology is used in a way where so and so moves their weight 90% to their right foot. You do 75. You need to do 90. I can't do 90. And then all of a sudden everybody's trying to do it. And like literally you go, well, you can't hit it.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah, 100%.
Sometimes the measurement on the technology is their blueprint. That's what they do. You know what I mean? And you can nudge it around a little to help them. But you move it too much and it just becomes unmanageable and unplayable. And then everybody ends up in the same box trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that it's a great point that everybody has a DNA, right? And when you measure people, so you measure their movement first to kind of see what they might do, and then you look at what they do and how they generate energy and speed and how they deliver the club. And a lot of times, the idiosyncrasies are actually what make them great. And if you try and put them towards any type of normal model or average, you kill them. And so that's the good part about the technology is it can kind of isolate the idiosyncrasies and then you can preserve them. But it takes quite an objective mind to be like that. And you also need quite a breadth of knowledge because otherwise you might get tempted to, oh, well, you need to do that because of this. And it's not maximizing things. That's the other part. It's like tour players and good players aren't like long drivers. You've got a long driver. It's a totally different animal because the dispersion on a shot is not on a high premium. They just got to get 1 out of 6 in the grid. But if you're playing on the PGA Tour, you need to keep it in the semi-rough. Let's just say that. You don't want any penalty shots. You do want to hit it a long way, but you need to be able to do it over 18, 36, 54, 72 holes and then a 25 to 30 tournament season. So again, there's a toll on the body of that. And then what can somebody produce consistently? And so it's one of those things you're just trying to always maximize somebody's output in terms of what they can do on a consistent basis, not at their maximum capacity. And I think everyone looks at, especially my club golfers, they come in here and they tell me how far they're going to hit it and what they're going to do. And I'm like, well, that's the best shot you've ever hit you're talking about. And you're basing your average off that. A tour player doesn't do that. A tour player's got plenty in the tank. Like they're generally trying to do it consistently at least 80% of the time so they can perform. And there's a big difference there in that. And I think some of the things that make people unique, you have to preserve and keep that and build around those sort of superpowers and strengths. And technology is great for that because it allows you to actually see it and like it's a tangible thing. It's not just I kind of see it on a video camera. So that's the part that I think is really cool.
And I think the thing is, when you look at it, Mark, is that each ingredient goes into the recipe. So, for instance, I could have a pressure plate, I could have a 3D my swing, I could have a hack motion on, I could have a TrackMan running, I could have all these things, you know, to give me an all-over view of what it is. But if I only use one piece, I've still got to think about what everything else is going on. Because one piece alone isn't the real picture, is it? You know, I need to be able to, if I'm going to use let's say the pressure trace on the floor, right? That's great. But I've got to think about everything else that's being managed as well in order to make that player better. You know, because it's a balance, isn't it? That the technology's giving you a glimpse of what happens. And, you know, I can look at that screen and go, oh, look, that's what's happening. And then I talked to Dr. Kwan, who's got this, you know, this, like the Ferrari of 3D, which tells you absolutely everything. And you're thinking, well, actually, that piece of technology has only shown me that bit. Look what else is going on within the picture.
Yes, and that's the tough part, is to try and isolate out where someone's struggling. And what none of it does yet is we're not doing it as they perform in the arena and the environment that they play in. And that's what makes it really hard. Like, we don't have live 3D and a wireless markerless set on the golf course right now. So we don't know that the sequence that we say should happen here isn't necessarily the sequence that happens when they play golf. I know that I've sprinkled around with my K-Vest on the golf course, different shots, different conditions. You do different things, and playing the game isn't necessarily about maximizing efficiency. It's about maximizing shot execution. So you do different things to produce different shots. You might intentionally be out of a optimal sequence and stuff like that. So I think that the technology...
What do you think the biggest changes are, Mark? What do you think the biggest differences are between a player on tour hitting it on the range and playing on the golf course?
The good ones or the bad ones?
Well, I think, you know, if you stand on the driving range, they all hit it dead straight once they're on a zone.
Yeah, I think everybody hits it well on. So think about this, right? When you're on a, I mean, we got a really nice driving range here. Okay, it's
beautiful.
Dead flat. So when someone's hitting into a wide open space, there's no consequence. It's not. There's no sort of outcome downfall to a negative execution. Whereas on the golf course, now the lights and the music are up, it's totally different. So remember, golf is the ultimate random environment. I always tell folks, the player that's the best prepared to adapt to any situation and has the most number of shots in their bag with that 14 clubs and embraces the challenge of it will play the best. Versus the person that might look perfect but has less shots, doesn't enjoy the challenge, the randomness, the variability of golf. And that, you see that in players all the time. There's some folks that just don't look very good on the range, but they're such good players. And there's some people on the range and you're like, they don't miss a shot, they look pure. And as soon as they get on the golf course, they completely shit the bed. So it's definitely, it's like, what is the difference? Well, the mindset of a competitor and someone that knows it's not going to be easy and embraces the challenge of it, I think that's massive. And that gets into the psyche of it, right? Like, how do you practice?
How do you prepare somebody for that? How do you instill that or develop that within a player?
So you're trying to, you breed it in their practice. You make the practice harder than the play. You're trying to intentionally create arousal, stress as much as possible. That's really hard, right? You cannot duplicate tournament play, but you can do different things through gamification and the way that you set up the parameters in practice to be really, really hard. I mean, if you look at Dave Allred and the pressure principle, that's what Dave does. Like in all the sports Dave helps with, that's what he does. He's doing, I mean, I'm a big fan of like special forces, like Royal Marines, SAS, the SEALs over here, like how they train. Well, they train so that they know going into a mission or an operation that something is going to go wrong, but they plan for the contingencies. So when you play in practice in terrible conditions, bad lies, you're preparing for those situations where you need to adapt and it's going to be bad. And you look at that as a challenge as opposed to, oh no, I've been a divot, right? So I think that that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to gear the player. You create this baseline of their normal, but then they have to be able to do different things and adapt their baseline technique for a variety of different shots that they're going to encounter, whether it's in the putting, whether it's chipping, pitching, bunkers, long game, you know, fairway woods, driving. Those are all things that, and we try and instill that in our juniors, like going on the golf course. A lot of situational stuff is really important. Scrummaging, right? That we call it, to try and create that so they realize, hey, I can actually do this. And I spend a lot of time pumping my players up, telling them how good they are, like, so that they can do that. And that's the part that it's not necessarily something that you can prepare for everything, but you're trying as the coach to kind of prepare for a contingency. And we do have the advantage, especially on the tour, is that they play the same golf courses every year. So once you know what golf courses require and what you've got to do, you can kind of trend practice and work on certain things. You're going to need this on the West Coast. Hey, when we get to the Florida swing, you're probably going to need to do more of that. Those are the things that you're trying to do as a coach, is always prepare someone so that they don't get to the situation and they're like, oh no. That's the tough part. But most people, you can make practice too hard and you can destroy people. You can make it too easy and there's no benefit to it. So it's trying to find that threshold to where you're making it, what I would say, difficult enough to where there's progression, but not so difficult that there's a regression. And that's the tough part. And that's where there's experts in motor learning, in practice, that those are all entities that are coming into golf. John Dunnigan and Will Wu have got a thing called Skilled Coaching Alliance, which is all about motor learning and the application. It's really good. So those things are useful tools to us as coaches into sort of programming with our information. I think we're really good with the X's and O's. I mean, let's be honest. A golf club wants to do a certain thing, but that's not the art to it, is then making somebody do that, but then do it in a way that they can apply it on the golf course and they can go hit golf shots when it matters. And remember, some folks just want the ball and they want to be the person taking the shot and doing it. In every sport, whether it's rugby, whether it's cricket, whether it's football, American sports, baseball, basketball, whatever. And there's some folks that don't like it. The guys and girls that thrive on wanting the ball when it matters, those are the people that generally perform really well. And if you can match that with a skill set,